This episode of Moist Meter brought to you by GodSlap Issue 2. Go to godslapbook.com to order your copy now.
Initiating moisture.
Welcome to the Moist Meter. Today we're taking a look at Forspoken. This game had a lot of buzz around it before it came out, but none of it was positive, and it mainly had to do with very cringy dialogue and writing in a trailer. And I didn't really believe that would be indicative of the game's writing. However, I couldn't have been more wrong. It actually dials that goofiness all the way up to 50 out of 10. There is no point in this game where the main character, Frey, isn't being snarky, rude, or sarcastic. She's written as if she's constantly playing Call of Duty in an Xbox Live lobby, just perpetually talking shit to everyone around her for no reason. The writing in this game actually does feel like the product of Marvel having sex with Twitter's most annoying comedian and the two of them performing this unholy fusion dance to write this game. I can't really overstate how annoying the dialogue was in here. It somehow made the most recent Saints Row game look not shitty in comparison. And unfortunately, it's not just the character writing with awful dialogue that feels like it was written by ChatGPT trying to emulate an edgy high schooler. That extends to the narrative as well to a certain extent. I think the story had a lot of potential and I was pretty interested early on. But unfortunately, it just really can't deliver the story beat super well. Like, the entire ending to this game kept repeating the exact same statement at least 9 times across like 30 minutes of walking from point A to point B for exposition. The amount of times that it kept reminding you of the evil guy is evil, and then saying the exact same reason he's evil over and over and over again just became so mind-numbing. I thought I was trapped in like a Doctor Strange Dormammu time loop kind of thing. I'm not kidding either. They say at least 5 or 6 times that evil villain is evil because he has done this evil thing which was very evil, and they repeat it fucking 1,000 times in such a short period at the end. It's just unfortunate because I do think like the core elements of this story are pretty interesting. I think the world could have been very cool, and it's visually beautiful. I think the game looks great, and I love the way the combat looks. Unfortunately, the combat itself doesn't feel very good to play. I'll get to that in a minute, but I want to stay in the more narrative and writing focused things since that was the biggest critique on the game from most people even before it came out. So I really just want to like elaborate on all of that to let everyone know that it is exactly how it appears to be in all of the promotional material with that whole freaking dragon. Did I move that with my mind? I just move shit with my mind. Yeah, I do that now. That is the attitude throughout the whole game, but then not even sprinkled, overly seasoned with the main character just genuinely being an insufferable asshole to every other character in the game. I want to really highlight this because it's something that's very frustrating to me. A lot of games and TV shows keep making the protagonist extremely unlikable without ever giving them a redemption arc. I have no problem making your protagonist like mean and hard to be like rooting for early on, but usually they go through subtle changes and they develop into a character that you can root for. Otherwise, what's the point in making a player bored and miserable playing a character that they don't like? That is what I thought they were going to do with this character, but unfortunately Frey never evolves. Up until the last 30 minutes of the game, she stays exactly the same. She's mean and rude to everyone. She wants nothing to do with this new world she finds herself in. And she even point blank says, even at the very end, that she doesn't care if the entire world burns. She says it to a girl who just lost her father, a girl who's supposed to be her friend, a girl that has literally saved Frey's life and it's been an incredible, like, very nice person. Frey looks her in the eyes and says, I don't care about any of you. I don't care if your world burns. It's not my problem. I just want to go home. And then she even tries to like out-trauma her by mentioning that she grew up on the streets without anyone like parents to look after. So she should be thankful that she had a dad. Like, for some reason, she's just trying to like out-victim her. And this is a girl who's supposed to be a friend of Frey's that just lost her fucking father. And Frey knows that. Frey held her father's hand as he passed away. And then she still turns around and just says, I don't care about it. I don't care about any of you. And all of this is happening at the very end of the game. I think this was the chapter before the final one. So she just never really developed at all. She just stays truly awful. And I'm just going to briefly tackle this because I've already seen a lot of people making this brain dead argument saying that people just don't like women protagonists. That's why people are hating on Frey. I think that's such a load of baloney. If this was a man that was written in the exact same way, I'm confident the majority of people would still have the exact same complaints. Now, of course, there are going to be weirdos that are complaining that it's a woman in the game, but there's going to be weirdos in everything. That's not the majority of people that have a very legitimate complaint about the writing. If this was a man written the exact same way, delivering the same lines, having the same character arc, everyone would still complain about it because they're just an asshole for the sake of being an asshole. So I know I spent a lot of time on that, but that's probably my biggest complaint. Now, the combat I do think had a lot of potential to be really interesting, but I think it was betrayed by how dog shit the AI is. I started playing this game on hard, and it was extremely easy. The game pretty much plays itself. It's extremely forgiving with your dodge timings, and it's really easy to avoid the attacks from all of the bosses and even just normal mobs, because I don't think there's a single enemy in this game that has more than 2 attacks. I mean, maybe 3 for a couple of them, but they only have like 2 or 3 attacks maximum. It's super, super easy to just not get hit. I didn't die a single time in this game. But the only difference between easy mode and hard mode is hard mode, all of the enemies, including normal mobs, take like 5 minutes of persistent DPS to finally kill. They are so fucking spongy, but it doesn't add anything else. I don't even think they do more damage on hard mode. I can't even recall now. They're just extremely tanky, so it's just tedious. It's not fun, it's just tedious. And the AI is so fucking stupid, you don't even really have to think about it. You can just walk up to anyone and any boss, any mob, and just easily kill it if you just spend enough time damaging it. You don't even really need to worry about dodging because half the time it'll even forget to attack you. I really like a lot of the spells, and I really like that you're able to mix the support and offensive spells pretty frequently. Like, there is cooldowns for some of the spells, but while those are cooling down, you can just use other ones and then combine them to do really cool things, and you have a lot of spells at your disposal. I also like the upgrade tree. Even though it's just like flat damage increases, they're not that creative. The spells themselves make up for that by being flashy and cool, but since there's nothing to really put it to the test on and like make you get creative on how you tackle combat, you can just spam the same shit over and over again. So it's not really a lot of fun to experiment with its combat system, though I do think there was a lot of potential with it. There's, of course, the magic parkour that I think you've all seen now, and that feels pretty good. Sometimes it gets a little janky when you start encountering some walls or tight corridors or even some cliffs, or not cliffs, but just like general open terrain like rocks in there. So sometimes it gets to be a little bit of a headache, but I do think overall that was pretty fun, and there's even like this little like lasso you can swing around with. So I thought the traversal mechanics, the parkour, all that was cool. I would have just liked if the combat itself was a little bit more interesting. Also, there's not many enemy types in this game at all. Like, it's mainly just zombies and then a couple of animals, and then the bosses are kind of different, but it's not a whole lot of enemy variety, and the enemies just don't really do anything, which, again, I've already touched on. Now, I will openly admit I didn't do any of the side quests because they all sounded like little fetch quests, just actual chore simulator stuff. So I didn't really bother, and I really wasn't interested in any of the other characters' stories because all of them were so poorly written. It made it hard for me to get excited to do any kind of side content. I really just kind of beelined the main story. It took me right around 8 hours. There is a lot you can do in the world. The world itself is kind of dead and just kind of lightly scattered enemies here and there, but there are some things you can do, such as these dungeons. There's these dungeons that you can enter for some powerful gear where you go through a couple of layers, then you fight a boss at the end, you get some cool gear. That gear can be things like a necklace, which gives you some certain bonuses, or nail polish, kind of. There's nails that you can do, which give you certain bonuses as well. So you paint these things on your nails and they give you bonuses, which is kind of silly, but kind of cool. Those were pretty fun. I stopped doing them halfway through when I realized it just doesn't really matter. It is so generous with how much XP and mana it gives you. You can pretty much fully upgrade anything just by beelining the story. There's never any real incentive to farm for better gear. There's also some challenges you can do throughout the world to give you even more mana, and the challenges are just kind of defeat boss in this amount of time, and it's really generous. Then there's also like Assassin's Creed lookouts that you can activate, which is kind of scan the area. The open world itself is very unimpressive, like with what it actually has in it. Just very standard stuff, but it was serviceable. I don't have any complaints per se. It was a fun world to go through, albeit I think it was a little needlessly big because going from point A to point B would take a long time, even just beelining it, because of course all you can do is run with your parkour, which does have a cooldown after you've used it for a certain period of time, and you'd be going like fucking 5 miles across a very barren, empty terrain. And then, I mean, you could do like a detour and do one of the dungeons if you want, but nothing too crazy in that department. Another thing that I didn't mention when it comes to its narrative is a lot, and I mean a lot, of this game is spent slowly trailing an NPC as they dump exposition. It's just listening to a story being told by an NPC that you're forced to follow slowly. It gets really frustrating. That's the majority of like campaign missions is follow this NPC around the town for a little while, then go here, kill person, come back, do it all over again. It's not a good way of delivering your story. And then once they're done telling you the story, they'll play a cutscene that doesn't really have a whole lot going on except for more characters just talking, even though you've already spent like 5 minutes trailing one who's also just talking. It's just, I don't know. I didn't really like the way they delivered the story in a lot of cases. Maybe it was a budget problem, which I do think might be the case because at the end of the game, you spend the majority of it just going point A to point B. And I mean, majority, like I'm talking like 45 minutes out of the last hour of the game is spent just going from point A to point B, touching these little floating things that give you story. They just give you exposition and lore. And you just sit there and listen to it, and then you go to the next one with nothing happening in between. And then there's like a boss fight towards the end. But it feels like they didn't have enough resources to do cutscenes for these things, which I think would have made it much, much better at the end of the game, as opposed to just forcing you to go touch these small little floating objects to look at static images that just talk at you. So yeah, it's just, I feel like this game really did have a lot of potential, but it just missed pretty much in every department, which is a real shame. Plugging Forspoken in the moist meter, I'm going to be giving it a 45%. I do think there were things to like about it, but overall, I just can't say I enjoyed my time with it. Especially towards the end, I really think they fucking flopped hard with the conclusion to this one, and just overall was mainly a miss. Just wasn't a great game. That's about it. GodSlap is a comic book series we've been working on for a couple years now. It's a hyper-violent, over-the-top sci-fi story about the beauty and destruction that slaps can cause. Issue 2 is out right now. It'd make a wonderful Christmas gift, so make sure to check it out at godslapbook.com. Right now we also have 3 variant covers that are in stock, but the second those sell out, those variant covers will never be restocked, so definitely make sure to pick up a copy today.